This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
GSMC Podcast Network. My name is Chris Blades, and before I get started today, I want to make sure I take the time out to remind you, as always, if you haven't already, subscribe to the podcast. Make sure you never miss an episode. Make sure all's on top when we drop our latest stuff. Also, if you could please as well, give us a 5-star rating, write us a nice review. It'd be very appreciated, very helpful. I'll see what you guys like, what you guys dislike, the ways we can improve, all that fun stuff. And also, if you're on social media, we're on social media, so you can find us there: Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. We can talk, we can chat, we can debate, we can discuss. And we have not Wednesday night action, Wednesday afternoon NFL football to discuss. Obviously a first. Don't want to say it'll be the last because we really don't know with the pandemic situation what 100% is going to go on this year. But like I said, long story short, we had Wednesday afternoon football, officially the longest week ever in the NFL, from early Thursday for the Thanksgiving Day game all the way till, I guess, the game finished around like 7-ish Eastern time on Wednesday, like early evening. So, like I said, the longest official NFL week in history. And the last game, it's hard to say because I wouldn't go as far to say that it disappointed, but it was definitely an interesting one, to say the least. Obviously you had the Steelers coming in undefeated, hoping to keep that streak alive against their division rival. And then you had, on the flip side of that, the Ravens, who hardly could get together to practice this week, really. I mean, Steelers probably had some issues too, just because of, I don't know how much they were trying to risk people getting COVID. I guess COVID being spread, I should say, during practice. I don't know if they were really risking that. But yes, then, like I said, you got the Ravens that got there without their starting quarterback, without starting running backs and things like that. So, again, you had situations where the pieces in place were not really what they would have been on paper. But again, because the NFL decided they weren't going to cancel the game, the show must go on. So you got to play with who you have. So I will start by saying that I want to give a shout out to the Ravens for putting up the fight that they did with, again, guys not being in the lineup or guys, again, having to play that wouldn't normally be expected to play. Like I said, like RG3 started the game. Trace McSorley, who was fresh off the COVID list, had to come in later because RG3 had a hamstring issue. Threw a touchdown pass. Shout out to him. But at the same time, he said that you wouldn't expect him to play. And also on the flip side of it, from the Steelers' perspective, they look like a team that hadn't really had the time to prepare for a game, even though they had their starters in, because it was offensively, I should say. Defensively, they were stout, but offensively, it was very sloppy. Like I said, if not for I think it was a pick six. I want to double check. Yeah, but if not for a pick six, they could potentially lose this game. And like I said, that's just how poorly they played on the offensive end. Yeah, the first score was a pick six by Joe Hayden, and that was the only touchdown they scored up until the early fourth quarter. Just like I said, that's not normally something that can get the job done against good teams. And again, I still think all in all, the Ravens are a solid team, but again, obviously they're missing some pieces, so it's a bit different. But like I said, the Steelers offense definitely left some to be desired. As Mike Tomlin said after the game, he was happy they won. Obviously, you prefer to win than lose. But he definitely wasn't happy with the effort or performance on the offensive end. They threw the ball, Ben threw the ball 51 times, only had 266 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 pick. Now, some of it wasn't his fault. There were quite a few drops. Who's it? Deontay Johnson had a weird game. He had 8 receptions, but he dropped at least like a couple, like 2 or 3 passes. So it was a situation where, like, again, there were plays out there to be made that they didn't make offensively, which is why they only end up with 19 points and only 12 of them coming on offense. The run game was solid-ish, like Benny Snell, 16 for 60 yards. It's actually, I wouldn't call it solid. I mean, that's almost 4 yards a carry, so that's not that bad, but then McLaurin didn't really add anything. They only had 68 yards on the ground at overall. I'm going to say through the air. Ben averaged 5.2 yards per attempt. So again, wasn't the greatest offensive performance, but when you have, in many people's opinion, including mine, the best defense in football, you can mask some of those things. Like that doesn't matter. Then again, obviously they were playing a lesser offense in this scenario due to the fact that the Ravens were undermanned. But still, I mean, this is something that the Steelers do to just about every team. They had 3 sacks, 5 quarterback hits, 8 tackles for loss. Like I said, the pick 6. So again, the defense came to play, did what they had to do. The Ravens offense really couldn't do all that much. Their most efficient player, the most efficient play was RG3 running the ball himself, which worked quite a bit throughout the game, kind of interestingly. So I'm curious to see, obviously, if it was Lamar Jackson and not RG3, game probably would have went a little bit differently. One would argue. But yeah, like through the air, they couldn't really do anything. Obviously, Trace had the long touchdown pass. But they only had 90 yards combined as a team passing the ball. Like I said, RG3 got sacked 3 times. Shout out to Hollywood Brown, though, for at least making the play. But it was a situation where the safety, I think it was Edmonds, tried to cut him off. Well, like tried to meet him when the ball got there, and that wasn't going to work. So then once he got free, it was all over. Like again, Minkah Fitzpatrick was running there trying to do his thing. But he's just, like I said, when you got Hollywood Brown with a full head of steam, it's going to be pretty difficult for you to keep up with him. So, yeah, it was nice little play, and obviously nice for Trace to get his first NFL touchdown. But, like I said, the offense really couldn't do a whole lot, and that's not unexpected. Due to the fact that, again, they didn't really have that much time to practice there. Again, the starters aren't in. Like, it is what it is. You just kind of got to make do. And they tried. They said it was a competitive game in terms of, like, score. Like, the Ravens were never really getting blown out. And also, again, another big thing was that if they handled the end of the half better, again, maybe they have a chance to win. And so the end of the half drive was interesting to say the least, because they get down there, they use their final timeout on 1st and goal. Then they run up the middle on 2nd and goal. The Steelers do what any team does, and that's kind of hold the pile a little bit. But because near the goal line, like, it was a little bit slower, them getting off, and the refs didn't really do anything to stop the clock or to stop them from what was obviously just trying to bleed the clock out. And John Harbaugh was irate. Understandably so, but also, like, why run the ball on 2nd down when you don't have any timeouts? That seems pretty foolish, in my opinion. And then they try to get up to run a play on 3rd down. It works. Luke Wilson was wide open. But Minkah Fitzpatrick was able to make a nice play on the ball and not get out. So like I said, then that was the end of the half. And like I said, you have 3 points in your pocket. The score is 12-7 at the time. So at worst, again, you have 2 incomplete passes, or you run a play and get up to the line quickly. And stuff like that. You can find a way to get at least a 3 points out of that, but because of what happened on the end of with the running play and then them getting off the pile and stuff, it took a while for it to happen, and thus they weren't able to get an extra play off. So, like I said, that's the unfortunate part of it. But it is what it is. Like I said, that sequence right there, had they played a little bit differently, maybe the end of the game is a little bit different, and now the Steelers have to drive, not to say they couldn't have, but they have to drive to win instead of driving to try to hold off the lead, which they were able to do. A nice little catch by James Washington, who had really done nothing up until that point. I think he had 2 catches, and that was his biggest one. Obviously, was on the third down there, where I know obviously it looked weird because Ben kind of threw it a little softly, but he was watching NFL Live and stuff. It seems like that was the plan. It kind of looked like that was the plan. In terms of, hey, he just wanted to try to get enough air under it to let him go up and make the catch and then get the first down. So, and obviously they were able to run the clock out from there, but that was really the game. It was 2:36 left. They had to stop there on 3rd and 6, and they have a timeout left plus a 2-minute warning. Hey, you never know. Plus they just scored on 2 plays this drive before. But obviously that was a big play there as well. And obviously many people are talking about the Steelers may or may not be a poor 11-0. And I get it because, you look at their schedule and look at their wins and look at their games, and you're just their best win is the Titans. At this point, obviously, they smoked the Browns and stuff like that, but, again, they had a close game with the Giants. If Daniel Jones is better in the red zone, they maybe lose that game. They had a close game with the Broncos. They basically needed Chase Claypool to be covered by a linebacker and them not to adjust at all to that for them to beat the Eagles. Like I said, they won barely against the Titans. They won barely against the Ravens. They were in a kind of competitive game with the Garrett Gilbert and the Cowboys. Obviously, they smoked the Bengals. They were able to beat the Jaguars pretty easy, and then obviously they had a close one with the backup Ravens. So again, 11-0, can't argue with the 11-0. But there's a reason why even at 11-0 and the only undefeated team in the league, people are still steadfast on saying that the Chiefs are the best team in the NFL. And especially since now Bud Dupree is hurt, so it's a situation where now you got to see kind of how they replace him, even though, again, he's not TJ Watt, wasn't having the impact in the same manner that he had the past year in terms of sacks and stuff, but he's still a very good player and had been a very good player. And it's just unfortunate for him because now he's out for the year with a torn ACL. Obviously, they already had Devin Bush out for the year with a torn ACL. So yeah, it's just a rough situation for them. Obviously, they got the guy Alex Highsmith, the rookie, who can try to replace him. And actually, let me not say that. He had 8 sacks this year. So I take back what I said. He was playing very well. Again, it's just hard when you're got 11. I think TJ Watt has 11 sacks on the other side. So in comparison, it's not as good. But again, he had 8 sacks on the season. So he was playing well. So obviously, again, when the injuries start to pile up, and obviously the claim to that team is the defense. Again, the offense can put up some points. It's going to need to put up points because if the defense isn't elite, they're going to need to score. And again, that's what they're going to have to do against the Chiefs, as you saw with the Raiders. They were in the game, so they were able to score with them. And they made enough defensive plays. If the Big Ben and the receivers can't be on the same page and they can't put up 25, 30 at minimum, the chance of them beating a team like the Chiefs in the playoffs are pretty slim. So, again, we'll have to see how that goes and see how they kind of adjust to life without Bud Dupree. And it's unfortunate for him because he's playing on the franchise tag. Was hoping to try to cash out this year. And again, was playing very well. So he probably was going to play himself into a big deal in free agency. And now we'll kind of see because, again, torn ACL. Not that it's impossible to come back from, but it's definitely going to hurt because he's not going to be healthy for the start of the next season. So like I said, it's unfortunate. But again, we'll have to see kind of how the Steelers go from here. See if they, I guess what they got, obviously they got 5 games left. They play Washington, the Bills, the Bengals, the Colts, and then the Browns again. Probably going to lose at least one of those games. I don't imagine them being good enough to go 16-0. But hey, we'll kind of see what happens there. And then as for the Ravens, they're in bad shape. They're in basically must-win mode. And obviously the big game on their schedule will be the Browns game in 2 weeks. Because they play the Cowboys on Tuesday. Should beat them with Lamar and some other guys back. But the Browns game, that'll be a big one on Monday night. The Browns are 8-3. They're 6-5. You need at least to bring them back a little bit to the pack to have a chance to maybe get in that wild card spot. Because right now, they are there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There are 8 teams above them. There's only 7 playoff spots. So again, they're not even the first team out. They're the second team out when it comes to playoffs. So like I said, they got some work to do to make up. Well, the Raiders are also 6-5, but again, I guess whatever tiebreaker that decides probably conference record. They're losing that currently, so that's going to be an issue going forward. So like I said, they're going to have to try to win as many games as from here on out. And like I said, they don't have the lightest schedule. It's not the hardest schedule, but it's definitely not a light schedule either. Like I said, play the Browns again and play... Actually, well, their schedule is not as bad. Because they play the Cowboys, should beat them, but you never know. Play the Browns, who they already whooped up on week 1. Play the Jaguars, play the Giants, and then play the Bengals. So those games sound winnable, but again, you got to win them. And that's really what matters. So again, we'll kind of see how that plays out for the Ravens. But overall, like I said, interesting. Definitely not mad about Wednesday afternoon football. I don't think it'll happen too often. But if it does, again, wasn't a bad alternative, obviously, for the West Coast people. I know weird time to be watching football. But anyway, so I guess we'll kind of see how that plays out going forward. But yeah, shout out to the Ravens for, like I said, keeping it competitive in a game where there was every reason for them to just get smoked. And again, we got the Steelers. They're going to have to continue to convince people that they're as good as their record claims they are. Because again, you are what your record says you are. So they're 11-0, they're undefeated. But again, most people don't even believe they're the best team in their own conference. So that says a lot about where the Steelers are at currently. But that is just me. So coming up next, we will, speaking of like the Ravens and the Browns, things like that, obviously those quarterbacks this coming off season are going to get, or you would think, are going to get paid from that draft class, like Baker, Josh Allen, Lamar. Sam Darnold not. We'll talk about why. But in light of what we've seen out of Carson Wentz and Jared Goff this year, will the teams be a little bit more hesitant, to pay those guys coming off of what obviously isn't going to be Super Bowl, not obviously, but what probably isn't going to be Super Bowl wins or Super Bowl appearances, you could even argue. So, like I said, we'll discuss all that right after the break. Stay right there.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines. They got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
And we're back. Here again on the GSMC Sports Podcast, presented by GSMC Podcast. So, as I said, you're going to see, obviously, with the Bills doing well and the Browns doing well, potentially making the playoffs, and obviously Lamar won the MVP last year. So, in theory, the guys from that draft class should be expecting big paydays come this offseason. And now, I still fully expect them to get those big paydays come this offseason because, generally speaking, when you talk about the quarterback position, that is the one position that very rarely has to wait on their money. Like I said, those guys usually get paid, deserved or not deserved. They usually get paid up front. Like, again, you can talk about like pass rushers or like corners or safeties or linebackers or D tackles, something like that. Those guys, maybe they got to play 4 or 5 years before they get that big extension. Quarterbacks, generally, if they're good after their first 3 years and a team really has no other options, generally speaking, they pay them. Now, again, Dallas, a weird situation. Don't really know why that happened because, again, they claim that Dak's their guy, but they had him on the franchise tag this year. Whatever. Obviously, we saw it with Kirk Cousins, too. Like, he was on the franchise tag for a couple years and performed well, but, again, they just weren't forever, for whatever reason, willing to pay him the big money to be their franchise guy. So, like I said, there are some exceptions to every rule. But generally speaking, the one position that doesn't have to wait on their money is the quarterback position. But I guess the thing that I'm thinking about and the question that I think probably won't get talked about that much but maybe should be this offseason is how willing will these teams be to tie themselves to a quarterback that isn't, like I said, that isn't a Patrick Mahomes, isn't a Deshaun Watson type. And so if you look at Josh Allen, Baker Mayfield, and Lamar Jackson, they're all, I mean, in my opinion, Baker's probably the worst of the three. But they're all, like, solid. Obviously, Lamar's coming off the MVP season. He's not playing as well this year. But, like, they're all, like, solid in their own right. They're all, in theory, assuming the Bills and the Browns hang on, will have led their team. Well, Josh Allen did it last year. So, assuming the Browns hang on, will have all led their team to the playoffs at least once in their first 3 years. So, again, it seems like it'd be like, all right, they're on the path to getting paid. And while I don't disagree with that, at the same time, you look at the play and where the team's at with Jared Goff and Carson Wentz, I wonder if more people will be hesitant to give out that big money until they know for sure. Like I said, Jared Goff, I guess we'll start with Carson. I think he got his money technically first. But he got his big money after 2017 year, obviously got hurt, but they won the Super Bowl. He was a big part of that. Should have been MVP, blah, blah, blah. 2018, he comes back, was a little bit banged up. Obviously didn't play as good, but still played well enough. Again, they made the playoffs without him, blah, 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 whatever. But they decided, like, hey, look, we're going to go with him over Nick Foles, gave him the big money. Last year, he leads them to the playoffs with no 5,000-yard receiver. Those are 500-yard receiver. Excuse me, obviously no 5,000-yard receiver. But no 500-yard receiver. Those are 4,000 yards, 27 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. Again, gets knocked out in the playoff game due to concussion. And then you have this year where he's been atrocious. Bottom 5, bottom 3 in almost every metric you could judge by. And now people are like, oh, should they bench him? Should they trade him? Should they regret giving him the money? Even though, again, his first, rookie year was rookie year. But the other 3 seasons are one of solid top 10, top 12 quarterback play. Granted, they're paying him top 5-ish quarterback money, but that's just kind of how it works. I mean, he'd been a very solid to good starting quarterback the last 3 years before this year. Again, obviously, everyone's using this year to be like, oh, he was never really all that good. And again, if that's what your opinion was before this year, then it's easier to say that after this year because he stinks. But if your opinion wasn't that before this year and you thought he was a solid quarterback, you're just like, all right, he's having a bad year. Like, again, quarterbacks do have bad years. It's not completely uncommon. Not everybody can be Patrick Mahomes. Not everybody can be Aaron Rodgers, can be Tom Brady. And again, it's clear like he's not that Hall of Fame level talent, though. Again, he's had the injuries and other things, like, again, his own injuries and the injuries to the team around him and things like that. So, again, there's maybe reasons behind it, but at the end of the day, if you're going to pay that much money, you do have to elevate your team to some degree. And he's not doing that right now. You could argue he's bringing it down. So, like I said, he's getting big money. And then, like I said, Jared Goff is a similar situation where I didn't even realize this, but people were talking about maybe him getting benched. And again, at least they don't have a second-round rookie quarterback backing him up. They have a guy that's never really played, so obviously it makes no sense to bench him. But when you look at his contract, it's crazy just as well. Well, I guess we'll get to the Carson one in a second, but Jared Goff's contract just doesn't even really kick in yet. Because this year, his base salary is only $1 million, and his cap hit's like 28. But over the next 2 years, it'll be 34.6 and 32.3. This is according to Spot Rack for the cap hit. And they have potential out in 2023. So then, and if they got out of it, they'd only be like $8.6 million in dead cap. While again, in 2021, the dead cap is $65 million. And in 2022, the dead cap is $30.9 million. So again, they're not going to get rid of him, you would think, that soon. Like, they're tied to him for at least 2 more years after this one, you would believe. But yeah, like, you could argue, like, Jared Goff really isn't all that good. Again, he's not terrible. And it's clear that he isn't the guy that he was in 2018. Because, again, last year, he was, again, solid, but not, like, spectacular. Only 22 touchdowns, 16 interceptions. His passer rating was 86. Completion percentage 62. So again, this year, he's not been bad, like 67 completion percentage, 16 touchdowns, but 10 interceptions, so it doesn't really have the touchdowns. The passer rating's 92. The yards per game are down significantly to 274, excuse me. So again, he's definitely taken a dip. I mean, it's a little bit better than last year, but it's definitely still a dip. And it's like, in theory, he's trending in the wrong direction. Like I said, the 2017 and 2018, in 2017 he had 28 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, 100 passer rating. And in 2018, he had 32 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, 101 passer rating, and he completed 62 and 65% of his passes, respectively. So again, it's like that Jared Goff isn't there, and now you got this Jared Goff, who is, like I said, a little bit more turnover prone, and isn't as efficient. Again, the completion percentage is higher this year, but like I said, the passer rating's down from where it once was and things like that. And again, now he's getting paid more money. So again, that's fine if you're doing that, like we're not getting paid that much, but now you're getting paid the big bucks. You need to put up the big buck stats, and he's not doing that right now. Like I said, there was a talk about him potentially being benched, and again, that was never going to happen because they don't really have a solid backup. But like I'm saying, does that, along with the Wentz thing, though, obviously they're out to a year earlier. I think because they could get out of it 2022. I'll double check that for you guys. But I think they could get out of the Eagles could get out of his contract 2022, which is why I think some people believe, not myself, but some people believe he could get traded in the offseason. Like I said, the contract probably a bit too much for me personally. But yeah, they have an out after 2022 with only $24 million in dead cap after that. So again, basically he's realistically tied to them for one more year because they can't cut him. It'd be like $60 million in dead cap. I forget what it would be if they traded him. But like I said, there's no way they could get rid of him this offseason in terms of like cut, like trade. Maybe if you find a team that would trade for him, and obviously we know what his stats have been like. He leads the league in turnovers, but near the bottom in passer rating, completion percentage, on target throws, all these different kind of things. So, like I said, it's hard to argue that he's lived up to that contract so far. So, like I said, does that cause the Bills or the Browns or the Ravens to be concerned? Because again, it's not like any of those quarterbacks are lighting the league on fire. Like I said, Josh Allen was playing better earlier, but now he's kind of regressed back to the mean. He's still the best year of his career, clearly, but it's obvious he's regressed back to the mean. Like I said, starting to turn the ball over a little bit more and things of that nature. But still, like I said, the best year of his career. So again, makes sense. But again, is this who Josh Allen is going forward? Is this an aberration? Like I said, that would be the worry. If he was like, all right, if he can be this, he can continue to be that. Or like I said, it's just everything right. Like if Brian Daboll leaves to become a head coach, like is he still this good? Like I said, there's like we saw that with the Eagles. You could argue, like I said, Frank Reich left, and that offense hasn't been the same. Don't know exactly how much say he had on the offense, because obviously the coordinator, but Doug called the plays. So again, it's hard to say how much he meant to that offense, but it's clear that the offense has gotten worse since he left, him and John DeFilippo. So there is that. Like I said, it'd be interesting to see what he would look like without Brian Daboll there. And like I said, the Baker is a similar concept where like he was good as a rookie, and then obviously he's winning games this year, but like the stats aren't really there. In terms of like he's putting up under 200 yards a game. Like I said, that's not franchise quarterback numbers. Granted, they have Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. They don't have to. Like I said, there's no reason for him to throw the ball all over the yard. But at the same time, it's like he's also like not throwing the ball like at all. And again, they had the stretch where they had like a bunch of games in bad weather. So it is there is that. But like I said, his highest yards in a game so far this year is 297. And that was a game he had the 5 touchdowns against Cincinnati. And again, that was a great game. I'm not trying to argue with that. But like I said, his numbers aren't exactly franchise numbers. And like I said, it seems as if they're trying to limit him, at least throwing the ball down the field. He hasn't thrown the ball more than 30 times since week 5. Yeah, since week 5 in the game against Indianapolis. Like he's thrown 18, 28, 25, 20, 22, and then 29. Granted, they're winning, so again, and take that. But again, it's like a Jimmy G scenario. Like again, they gave him a lot of money before he even really played for them, and now it's like, yeah, like is he really worth that? Granted, he didn't get like Goff or Wentz money, but is he like really worth paying big money? That's what I'm saying. Is this if we're gonna limit and be like, hey, instead of like I think even the offensive coordinator or somebody was like, we'd rather him just throw a 5-yard completion than throw the ball 20 yards down the field and risk it getting picked. And like, I get that. but also, like, how good can your team be if your quarterback, if you don't trust him to throw the ball more than 5 yards or 10 yards down the field? Granted, they got the Niners to the Super Bowl, but again, they lost because when it came time to trust Jimmy G, he couldn't get the job done. Like I said, that's really the concern, and obviously Jimmy G is not the number one overall pick. Like, we're saying that about a number one overall pick. Like, number one overall pick is supposed to be all-pro, Hall of Fame caliber players. Like, we're not talking about, like, hey, let's not let him throw the ball down the field because he might turn it over. Like, that's not what you want from number one pick. And then, like I said, with Lamar, and also, again, obviously going back to last year, he had 21 picks last year. And even after having, 14 the year before. So, again, last year he was, like, really bad. This year he's gotten better, obviously, which is good. But still, it's not like, he's not playing like a top 10, top 5 quarterback. So, again, how can you pay him like one? And then, obviously, Lamar coming off the MVP, so that'll probably buy him enough headway with the franchise to get that money. But also, he hasn't really played that well, at least as a passer this year. 15 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, which isn't that bad. But under 200 yards a game. His passer rating has dropped from 113 last year to 93, so that's a 20-point difference. His QBR has dropped 20 points as well. So again, it's just a situation where it's like, can he be a good enough passer consistently to warrant that big money? Because again, obviously running, he's still a good runner, and he'll always be a good runner. Like, that's never going to be a concern with him. Though he's not as good as he was last year, but still, he's going to always be a good runner. But it's a situation where it's like, if we can't even trust our quarterback to throw for 200 yards in a game, how can we pay him $130, $140, $150 million? Like, that seems, I guarantee obviously Lamar does other things. But I'm saying, like, if he's not a great passer, which again, he's never really, I mean, he was a good passer last year, but he has definitely taken steps back this year. Lamar has as a passer. I still have faith in him, but again, he's taking steps back. Like, you can't argue against that. So again, it's just like, it's hard because these teams are going to be competitive, and these teams, at least two of these teams, if not all three, could potentially make the playoffs. But, like, does that trick you into doing something you don't want to do? Like I said, the Rams made the Super Bowl, and they're like, all right, okay, Jared Goff's that guy. He can be a Super Bowl caliber quarterback. And then he's got paid, and he hasn't played up to that since then. So it's a concern. And obviously, again, Wentz has never really returned to his 2017 form per se. Again, he was still solid the next 2 years, but it's never 2017 good. And then now he's bottom tier quarterback. And he's getting paid top tier quarterback money. So like I said, I don't think it's going to matter. I don't think the Bills are going to move on from Josh Allen and not pay him. I don't think the Ravens are going to move on from Lamar Jackson and not pay him. Again, they set up the offense. Like, they can't run any other offense. They can't run this offense with somebody else. They can't just like drop somebody else in there and be like, yeah, it works. And the same thing with like Baker. As long as they're winning, I think he'll be all right. But again, just it's something I am going to pay attention to and kind of look at as we go through this offseason, just seeing, hey, like, how much faith do these teams have in these quarterbacks moving forward, and will that be reflected in their pay? Like I said, that's just really where I'm at with it. It's like, will that be reflected in their pay? Like, will they get those big extensions this offseason, these three quarterbacks? Obviously, again, Sam Darnold's a different story. Again, he won't get it until after the fourth year at best, and that's assuming he's still on the Jets, which he might not be. Depending on what they do with the coach. And if the coach is like, yeah, I can save Sam Darnold, or like, you know what, I don't really like Sam Darnold, we're drafting Trevor Lawrence, so like, get rid of him, kind of thing. And obviously, Josh Rosen is not obviously out of the equation. But again, it's just something I am curious about, seeing how Goff and Wentz are playing after getting the big money. Again, Mahomes is playing great, Deshaun Watson is playing great, so you can look at that too. But again, there's two sides to this. Like, all right, do you think these guys can be Watson and Mahomes? Or do you think these guys will be Goff and Wentz? And if, like I said, if they're Goff and Wentz, does that cause you to be hesitant to pay them that big money? Like I said, I don't think it'll come up, but just something to keep an eye out for this offseason. At least in my personal opinion. So, after we come back here from this next break, got to switch over. This NBA starting up soon. And, we had a pretty big trade go down. I mean, you could argue how much it does for either of these teams, but at least there was big names involved. So we'll talk about that trade and also what it means for the Lakers to have commitments from Anthony Davis and LeBron long term. So we discuss those right after the break. Stay right there.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
And we're back here again on the GSMC Sports Podcast, presented by GSMC Podcast Network. So, Russell Westbrook, who was once thought to have a contract that was untradeable, has now been traded twice, much like Chris Paul has been traded twice. They thought his contract was untradeable too, and now he's been traded twice. But yeah, Russell Westbrook is no longer a member of the Houston Rockets. He is now the newest member of the Washington Wizards, having been traded for John Wall, another contract many people thought was unmovable, and a lottery-protected 2023 first-round pick from the Wizards, which, again, for the Rockets, makes sense due to the fact that most of their picks could potentially end up in OKC. So, again, they kind of going to need a pick back. Plus, they got to take on John Wall. I wouldn't say they have to take on John Wall's contract, but again, it was either this or just keep Russ's contract, so it's really not any different. Like, I think the contract numbers work out to be about the same, more or less, over the next 3 years. Both have 2 years and a player option left, I believe, so it's a situation where like the contract is what it is at this point. But again, the first round pick could be decent in theory. It's lottery protected in 2023, like I said. If it doesn't convey in that year, it has a succession of protections that include picks 1 through 12 protected in 2024, 1 through 10 in 2025, and 1 through 8 in 2026. If it hasn't conveyed by then, it becomes a second round pick in each 2026 and 2027. Apparently, there hadn't really been too much discussions on this trade front since like mid-November, but apparently both the GMs of Washington and Houston got on the phone on Tuesday afternoon and were able to work out a deal within minutes. So I guess that was kind of quick. So shout out to them. But yeah, it's an interesting situation that both these teams are now in. Because again, you look at it from Houston's perspective. All right, I understand at the end of the year, Russ was like kind of bad and like can't shoot. I get that 100%. He also supposedly wanted out. So it's like, all right, okay. I get why you'd want to get rid of him. And again, at least you get a point guard back. You can just trade him for like nothing. You're getting back John Wall. Now, again, from Houston's standpoint, the issue is that John Wall has not played in 2 years. Now, again, he's been working out. He's been like, I imagine he's been doing like private runs and different things with some of these not professional athletes, some of these NBA players. So they've probably seen him play since he last played. But at the same time, he hasn't played an NBA game in, like I said, like 2 years. And I believe he ruptured his Achilles and then re-ruptured it. So there's no real example of somebody coming back from an Achilles injury that they ruptured twice. So again, you're kind of just in the dark on what John Wall is right now. Like I said, that's a scary proposition to be in when it's debatable how happy your star player is at the moment. But apparently, James Harden hasn't even shown up to like camp and stuff yet in Houston, so that's kind of a big deal. Apparently, also there were rumors out there that Harden wanted to trade, i.e. to Brooklyn or maybe to Philly, and like I said, if that is true, then again, getting John Wall is nice, but your team's not going to be that good with just John Wall. And like Boogie, but we'll talk about that in a second. So like I said, in theory, you'd want to try to keep your star player happy, but if he's not that happy, then that is kind of a weird situation to be in. Just because, does John Wall entice him to be like, you know what, guys? All those trade talks I was talking about, like, nope, I want to stay here and play with John Wall. Because again, what is John Wall right now? Like, that's the big question mark. Because we don't know. Like, again, you know what Russ is. He's still relatively athletic. Can still get to the rim fairly easily. Mid-range jumper is not as good as it once was, but still pretty solid. And he can't shoot from three. That's clear. He can still play make. His free throws, I believe, went up this past year. Like I said, at least you kind of know what Russ is. You have no idea what John Wall is going to look like. Like, not even the slightest clue. And again, that, to me, would be scary if I'm Houston. Because like I said, if this doesn't work out, then you potentially don't have Harden anymore, because he'll probably continue to request a trade if the first month and a half, 2 months of the season doesn't really work out. And then you're stuck, like I said, not stuck with John Wall, but kind of sort of stuck with John Wall. And like I said, last time he played in 2018-2019, he only played 32 games after only playing 41 games a year before that. He was averaging 20, 8.7, and 3.5 rebounds. His free throw percentage was terrible. It was only 69, almost 70% that year. 3-point shooting was down from the year before, where it was at 37. Wow, did not know he hit that high from three. Shout out to him. Down 30%, and his field goal percentage was 44%. So like I said, he was solid. Obviously, his best year was 2016, 2017? Yeah, when he averaged 23 and 11. Like I said, that was probably peak. And like I said, it's only gone down since then. It's only gotten more injured since then. So again, it's hard to what are you getting? Are you getting a 20 and 10 guy? Are you getting a 29 guy? Are you getting a 15 and 8 guy? We don't know what John Wall is going to be. Like I said, from a Houston standpoint, I would be afraid of that. Like I said, you're still tied to this contract for at least 2, and if he opts in, most likely 3 years. And a situation where it's not like a Chris Paul situation where basically you need him to play well, or even a Russ situation. You need him to relatively play well for people to want him. If he doesn't play that well, and he's not, like I said, he's never going to be the same after the injury. Who's going to want him? In the next offseason, who's going to be willing to trade for him? So then you're going to kind of be stuck. So like I said, that's the weird dynamic they're in right now. On top of the fact that you don't really know how happy or displeased this James Harden is with this move, and obviously he's your franchise. He's a star player and everything. So if he's unhappy, then that's going to be an issue moving forward. But I will say, shout out to John Wall and Boogie Cousins for their reunion. That's kind of cool. Obviously both guys are coming off of injuries and stuff, so that's not good. But again, former college teammates at Kentucky. That's pretty cool to have them back together. But yeah, it's what are the Rockets going to be with John Wall in there instead of Russ? Again, does that make them better? Does that make them worse? It's really hard to know until you see John Wall play. Again, and play for a month. Well, probably not even a month, 2 months. And again, because if he could get off to a good start to the year, all right, that's fine. But again, if as we saw, Russ was great from January to March before the shutdown. Then obviously he got COVID, and then I say he was banged up. So like I said, that he ended the playoffs badly, but for a couple months there he was great. So like I said, it's you're not going to judge John Wall for hey, say he gets off to a hot start in the beginning of the year, in the beginning of the season. All right, that's great, but then we got to see, can he keep that up for 4, 5, 6 months? Again, he hasn't played real basketball in almost 2 years. So, like I said, that's kind of scary if I'm a Houston fan or I'm a Houston coach or the GM or whoever. Like I said, from Washington's perspective, again, at least you get a guy that you know is playing. So that's good. Again, you know what Russell Westbrook is at this point, and you know what he isn't. Like I said, there's less unknown about what he's going to be with your team. Granted, you don't know how he's going to play with Bradley Beal, things like that, but you know that he's played for Scott Brooks before. He played with Scott Brooks with another teammate that was a very skilled player, obviously, and Kevin Durant. Also, James Harden was there as well. So again, you shouldn't have issues playing with Bradley Beal. He's played alongside Paul George, played alongside Melo, played alongside James Harden. So he's played alongside some of the top players in the league. So again, there's no reason to believe that him playing alongside Bradley Beal would cause some sort of issues. But again, at least now like, all right, we have a solid point guard in there. Like I said, you would hope John Wall be solid, but you just don't know. Like that's the big issue. You just don't know what John Wall is going to be at this point in time. You just have no idea. And like I said, that's the scary part. You literally don't know. Like, you hope he's going to be good. You want him to be good, but you really just don't know. And like I said, that's scary. Like, at least with Russ, played for the coach before. He's played alongside another dominant wing player. Obviously, Beal has to be ball dominant with John Wall not there. But again, he's another high profile wing player, another very good scoring wing player. So again, and done it multiple times. Even like with Harden, PG, and KD, obviously back in the day. So again, that shouldn't be an issue. And you would think, all right, this doesn't all of a sudden make the Wizards a top team in the East, but at least makes them playoff viable. Like I said, with John Wall, they probably playoff viable as well. But like now, they're definitely playoff viable because Russ is good. And Russ has never, since KD left, missed the playoffs. Again, he's never gotten past more than the first round, which he did this past year in the bubble. But again, he's never not made the playoffs. Like, they've always made the playoffs. So again, you would think at least the Wizards should be good enough to make the playoffs. Again, obviously you got to factor in the other teams. Like, they're not better than the Bucks. They're not better than maybe they're better than the Raptors. We got to see obviously they got Van Vliet back, with what losing Serge and Marc Gasol will mean to them. But they're not better than the Celtics. Not better than the Pacers, most likely. They're not better than the Sixers, most likely. They're not better than the Heat, most likely. They're not better than the Nets, most likely. Like I said, that's at least 5-6 teams right there. So they're competing for that 7-8 spot with like the Magic and like maybe the Hawks and like maybe the Hornets or like another like surprise team. Who knows? But again, like that's kind of where maybe the Raptors. Like I said, I don't know if the Raptors are going to drop out of the playoff picture. But again, we got to see what those losses mean to them and their bench and things like that. But yeah, it's just a situation where like I don't know how good that makes the Wizards, and I don't know how good that makes the Rockets. Like I said, it's a very odd trade. Like, normally you have like a winner and a loser, and like I don't know who won or who lost. I mean, again, it's hard to say for certain until they play the games, but you get the point. Normally you're like, all right, well, this team's getting this, and this, and this team's getting that, and that. And because we don't know what John Wall is, we don't know what the Wizards are losing, and we don't know what the Rockets are getting. We only know what the Wizards are getting. And like I said, that's a solid point guard, but again, I don't really know how much you can count on a guy that can't shoot in 2020 at the point guard position where he's going to be handling the ball a lot. Like, that's a scary proposition. But yeah, like I said, it should be interesting to see kind of how that plays out. And then also, we had the news of LeBron and Anthony Davis both inking extensions with the Lakers, which is great news for the Lakers. Because again, just moving forward, you want to know that both those guys are tied in long term. Like, I think technically Anthony Davis is a year longer because obviously his thing was like a 2-year extension. So like I guess I think it takes him through like 2024. And he had a lot of money too. Again, 2 years, $85 million. So shout out to Rich Paul. But he has extension to 2022, 2023. Excuse me. So I think the AD extension will go through 2023, 2024. And the funniest thing is that this kind of ties into the Lakers for longer than it ties LeBron in most places. Like I said, I know Bonwani Jones mentioned this on Highly Questionable earlier today, but like, again, obviously, he was going to stay in Cleveland for the years until he could get out in free agency. It only took the 3-year extension, I believe, so he could set up 2010. Then he was with Miami for 4 years, was with Cleveland for 4 years, and obviously now he's been with the Lakers for 2. And if you go to 2022, 2023, I think that's what, like 5, maybe potentially even 6 years he could be with the Lakers. So again, that's a different type of commitment that he hadn't normally had to franchises before, which is again big for them. Well, big for him because again, obviously he's getting that money, which is again the Lakers have shown what they did with Kobe and with like Magic and other guys. If you do right by them, they'll do right by you. So again, obviously he won them championship, and they're like, all right, well, I mean, shoot, we're not going to pay you. So, and LeBron was also not going to turn that down. And so that's pretty cool. And then, like I said, Anthony Davis, there was never really a doubt that he was going to leave per se. But again, with his 5-year, $190 million extension, that ties him, though I guess he has the player option in 2024. So like I said, that ties him there for a year past when LeBron's contract technically is there. But again, just it keeps them locked in long term. So when you make all decisions going forward, you know that LeBron and AD are going to at least be here for the next 3 years. So you can make decisions based on that. Like I said, whether that means go out and trying to get Giannis in the offseason or try to acquire like Bradley Beal or whatever that may mean. And so you know that you have these guys here. Like, you don't know, like, oh, are they going to leave this year? Are they going to leave in 2 years? Like, you don't have to worry about that. You know that these guys are going to be here long term. And like I said, that's good for the Lakers. And again, that's just cool for them because now LeBron, I think, because if Bronny can come out in 2023, if the NBA changes the rule where like high school players can head to the draft as opposed to just having to go to the 1 year of college or like 1 year post high school kind of thing. Like I said, it's good for the Lakers because again, it gives them a level of security and commitment from LeBron that he hadn't normally shown to franchises, at least recently. I said, didn't really show it to Cleveland. The second time there, didn't really show it to the Heat during his time. They were just like, hey, I'm going to be here, win some championships, and like move on. Like I said, the Cavs are just like, I'm going to come back, try to win a championship, then move on kind of thing. Now the Lakers seems like this is probably where he finishes. You never want to say for certain because LeBron, you really don't know. But this might be where he finishes out. So again, that's just cool for the Lakers and cool for him, like I said, to get that money. As he'll make $44.5 million in his age 38 season. Which again, he rightfully deserves because, I mean, he's, based on what he brings to a team and to the NBA in general, him getting only $44 million a year is probably low. If you, like I said, there was no salary cap and you get paid whatever, he'd be getting paid well over $50 million a year. At minimum, in my opinion. Like I said, there was no cap, and he could just get paid whatever. Like, there's no way, especially now, he's getting paid under $50 million. No shot at all. So, in all honesty, the Lakers got themselves a discount. And like I said, again, it just gives them, like I said, gives them security to make moves. Just because I think the Lakers realize they're like, hey, if LeBron's still good for like the next 2 to 3 years, we have a chance to win at least one, if not two more championships. So let's just like make sure we have the security there to be like, hey, we're going to be here for this amount of time, and we can make moves with that in mind. So like I said, it's good for the Lakers and good for the players. So like I said, Anthony Davis and LeBron get their money, and then the Lakers get the security of knowing that they will be with the team for the foreseeable future. So like I said, works out good for both sides. But speaking of money and like things like that, there is a big fight coming up this weekend. Errol Spence Jr. and Danny Garcia. And while obviously that's a very big fight and whatever, I think the interesting thing will be how it is received and viewed and what kind of popularity it has and like what kind of comments you have around it. And like I said, what the chatter is in relation to last week's fight. Obviously, it's not the same caliber with like Mike Tyson and Roy Jones and Nate Robinson and Jake Paul and things like that. But like Mike Tyson, I think I said Mike Thomas. Mike Tyson had some interesting comments about the likes of Jake Paul and like Logan Paul and KSI and those type of guys and what they've done to the sport of boxing. And it's going to be interesting to see how that it will be reflected next weekend. So, not this next weekend, on Saturday, I believe. So, we'll discuss that right after the break. Stay right there.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red-hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's gsmcpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit gsmcpodcast.com for more info.
breakdown with Errol and my combat sports fans. Obviously, you are well aware that Errol Spence Jr. versus Danny Garcia is going down this Saturday in Dallas at AT&T Stadium. Obviously, welterweight title fight. It headlines a pay-per-view that's going to be in, I believe, at 9 p.m. Eastern time. And just if you are, just also, I guess I'll give you guys a quick note if you didn't know. You can watch it for, I think it's like $75. It'll be streamed through the Fox Sports app because it's Fox Sports pay-per-view. And so again, if you want to watch it there, you can. If you want to, get some friends, split it, whatever. However you want to watch it. Cool. If you don't want to watch it, also cool. But obviously, if you're a boxing fan, you know that this is one of the best, however you want to word it, fights that the sport could put together at this point, especially at the welterweight division. And he said the only fight that would top this one, if Errol Spence is able to win, is him versus like Terrence Crawford. That's the one. Because again, it's about time that they get together in the ring. But again, Errol Spence has to get through Danny Garcia first in order to do that. And Danny Garcia is no slouch, 36-2. I think he's won his last 2 fights. He last fought in January of this year, I believe. So again, it's a long time. Most of the boxers, especially now, are on a long hiatus at this point. But again, no slouch, is definitely a solid opponent and a solid return fight for Errol Spence, who, again, if you didn't know, was I think his last fight was September 28th of 2019. And I think about a month later, October, a little under a month later, October 10th, he was involved in a very horrific accident that could have claimed his life. Luckily, he didn't. He walked away with broken bones and some other things. But obviously, it's been over a year since he last fought. Like I said, it doesn't even factor in the pandemic situation. He just had to get back to being healthy enough to fight. And then obviously the pandemic was a separate point. So like I said, he's been out of the ring now for about 14 months. And it'll be interesting to see kind of how he comes back from that. Because again, at the time, after he beat, I believe it was Sean Porter in his last fight, he could be argued as the best pound for pound boxer in the world. There's a different argument to be made that it was him. He's 26-0, 21 knockouts. Again, he's at the height of his career. And obviously he had the accident, so he had to kind of reset and recharge and get back to hopefully where that same level. And again, if he wins on Saturday, he'll be able to do that because then he'll get Terrence Crawford next, most likely. Then they can do all that, the unification bout, and then boom, everything's set. And I said, got to get past Danny Garcia first because again, Danny Garcia is no slouch, though he did lose to Sean Porter, who, like I said, Errol Spence beat in a split decision, I believe. So again, it's a scenario where Errol Spence, it'll be interesting to see how he is. Like I said, not having fought in so long, not having fought since his accident. On top of that, again, it'll be interesting to see kind of how he comes out and how he does in this fight. Again, against the guy that isn't a slouch. But like I said, the bigger story, at least in my opinion, will be kind of how this is received, how the fight is received, how the fight is viewed, what the numbers are like, and things like that in comparison. And what the talk around the fight is in comparison to the event last weekend on Triller, I believe, with the Mike Tyson Roy Jones event. And I say that only because obviously it's a different situation, but it's clear that the sport of boxing is not as popular as it was when the likes of Mike Tyson and Roy Jones were at the top of their career. And there's no real good reason for why it shouldn't be. There's a lot of great fighters, other than the fact that the best fighters aren't fighting enough. That's really the biggest story. One of the biggest stories I could argue. But again, there's great fighters. There's great matchups to be had out there. Like I said, there are young guys that could potentially reach star status. Like I said, Errol Spence being one of them. Like I said, the Ryan Garcias of the world, Devin Haney's, Tank Davis, Teofimo Lopez. Again, you got Teofimo Lopez versus Lomachenko. Which also was a big match. And again, that was given out for free on ESPN just because they wanted people to watch it. And as I said, that's kind of match that would have sold out whatever venue it was at, whatever arena it was at. Could have done huge numbers, you would think. But like I said, you just don't know because that's just where the sport of boxing is. Very the stars aren't really there. and the level is uncertain. And Mike Tyson mentioned that after his fight. He talked about how YouTubers have helped save the sport of boxing. So yeah, this is from Clutch Points. Again, there were a couple of different articles about this. It's on, like I said, it's on Yahoo as well. I'm just reading this off of the Clutch Points. Excuse me, that was the first headline I saw. But yeah, so Tyson said that my ego says so many things, but my reality is they help boxing so much. Talking about like again, YouTubers and other guys in the entertainment field coming into the world of boxing. According to the heavyweight icon in this article, it says boxing has already lost its ground to the UFC, obviously, which has been increasingly popular. Well, it has been increasing in popularity, in recent years. A 27-year-old company has successfully made its mark in the martial arts industry and continuously garners millions of viewers every pay-per-view event. Obviously, we saw that with the Fight Island and stuff like those. Those were all doing fantastic numbers in the middle of the pandemic when everybody was at home. Boxing owes these guys, YouTube boxers, some respect. He continued. Give them some belts because these guys make boxing alive. Boxing was pretty much a dying sport. The UFC was kicking our butt. Tyson also added the platform and the influence that these personalities like Jake Paul have can ultimately contribute to bringing the sport of boxing back to the mainstream. Now we got these YouTubers, 20 million subscribers. Boxing is coming back thanks to these YouTube boxers. I believe the more anyone boxes, the better it is. Boxing has taken some beatings since the UFC has been around. And now, like I said, that Jake Paul's knockout of Nate Robinson was on, like I said, was all over social media. Was again talked about on sports talk shows and things like that. The next, like on Monday, and stuff. So again, I don't know if the Errol Spence Danny Garcia fight will be talked about in the same vein if something amazing doesn't happen. Like I said, if Danny Garcia or Errol Spence gets knocked out spectacularly, like all right, they don't get talked about. But like I said, I don't know if it'll get talked about. Even like again the Tyson fight. Tyson Roy Jones thing was kind of talked about. I haven't really heard too much of the general sports shows talking about this fight just on its own. And again, that's just because the general public doesn't care about boxers as much as it once used to. And like I said, I think that Mike Tyson has a fair point. And when you saw like I said, Logan Paul or Jake Paul or the KSIs of the world where they have 15, 20 million YouTube subscribers and all these millions of followers on Instagram and Twitter and TikTok or wherever they're at. Like I said, that brings eyes and that brings viewership to the ring. And also, again, it just shows that they are stars before they even step in and before they even lace up boxing gloves for the first time to train. And like I said, that's what I feel like the sport of boxing is missing, is those stars. Not to say there can't be, like, again, the Canelo Alvarez are very popular. Then, well, he is very popular. Guys like that are very popular. Like I said, Ryan Garcia, for a young guy, is very popular. Again, a lot due to social media. But a guy like that, he's very popular. Like I said, when you saw with Canelo, like, again, he had to get out of his, well, I guess, I don't know, like, he kind of got out of his deal, but then he's fighting on his own in, like, December, so I don't really know how that's working. But again, he hasn't been in a ring since, who did he last fight? Kovalev? I think that was, like, November of 2019. It's been over a year since he's been in the ring, and again, he's arguably the biggest name in the sport right now. Like I said, Teofimo Lopez and Lomachenko was obviously a huge fight. But like I said, neither of those guys are like stars per se. Like Teofimo could be a big star. But again, neither of those guys are stars. They're just very good boxers. And like I said, that's the issue. Is that like when you have these YouTube guys come in, like they're stars before they get into the ring. So then again, their fans and other people want to see them in the ring. Well, their fans obviously want to see them win. And then the people that don't like them want to see them lose. The same thing that happened with Floyd. Like I said, Floyd, at a certain point, you watched him because you wanted to see him lose. Because he was a guy who was going to talk a lot of trash. But also, like, again, he backed it up. But he was going to talk a lot of trash, like, be disrespectful. That's even kind of why Conor McGregor was able to get a fight with him. Because, again, he had that same level of stardom. And that's what I'm saying. You've seen with the UFC. Like, you've seen, like I said, the Conor McGregors. Or the Ronda Rouseys. Or, like, again, not even, those are just, like, the popular guys that non-UFC fighters know. But, like, again, like John Jones and some of these other guys, like they're stars in the sport. Like I said, Errol Spence is just like a really good boxer. I don't know if he's a star in the sport. They get into outsiders. They get in the sport of boxing, yeah, sure. Like I said, the outsiders know. You don't have to watch a UFC fight to know who Conor McGregor is. You don't have to watch a UFC fight to know who Ronda Rousey was. You don't have to watch a UFC fight to know who John Jones is, like Anderson Silva. Like there's guys that are out there that you know. You don't even have to be a fan of the sport. Like I said, I don't think that happens in boxing the same way. I don't think your average person just walks around knowing who Canelo out. Like maybe Canelo. Like I said, your average person walks around knowing who Floyd is, knows who Mike Tyson is, knows who Roy Jones is, probably knows who like Oscar De La Hoya is, like guys like that, because they were stars at the time. Like I said, for whatever reason, boxing has not been able to capitalize on that in an era where it should be easiest to capitalize on that. Like I said, you see in every outside of maybe baseball, like every other, and hockey to a degree, but like again, they're not as popular a sport, at least in America. But like I said, you see in football, you see in basketball, guys can become stars before they even step into the league. Like it's not that hard. Like I said, with YouTube and social media and all those other different things, like you don't need to be, like I said, professional, or you don't need to have like championship belts to become a star. That's why I just said like a guy like Ryan Garcia could be that next guy, because I think he has like 5 million followers on Instagram, something like that. I mean, I'm checking it for you as I speak right now. But like I said, he's a very popular person. Take that back. He's got 7.6 million followers on Instagram. And obviously, again, Instagram followers don't necessarily translate into viewers on a pay-per-view. Like I said, they can when you talk about these YouTube guys, and they do when you talk about these YouTube guys. So like I said, that'll be the interesting thing for me to tell, is that like, one, kind of like what are the numbers and what does it look like for this big fight? Because again, this is a very big fight. It's Errol Spence's first fight back after his car accident. Again, he's arguably the best boxer, pound for pound in the world right now. He's facing off against a very good opponent, Danny Garcia, and potentially this could lead to a fight with Terrence Crawford and things like that. So that'll be interesting to see kind of what happens there. And then if he does win, what does the sport of boxing do for him or with him after that? Or what does he do for himself? Like I said, with social media, you don't really need, like again, a promotion, like a big promotion team behind you, like a big network behind you to become a star. Like I said, Garcia was kind of a star, even though I think he's fought like 14, 15 times, something like that. Like he doesn't even have that many. 20 fights. He's 20 now. Excuse me. And obviously he's got Golden Boy behind him, but again, he hasn't really. It's not like he has 30, 40 fights. Like he just, again, he's very popular on social media. He's a good looking guy, like young, which can kind of coincide. Like I said, same thing with Jake and the Logan Pauls and KSI. Like they're all like on the younger side of things, so they garner fans that way. But again, Mike Tyson's right. Like again, the YouTubers kind of brought some energy back just because they're bringing viewership and they know how to market. They know how to talk trash. They know how to like again go back and forth. They know how to like again and do different things like that. Like you don't normally see. Like I said, I haven't really heard much of anything come out about the fight between Errol Spence and Danny Garcia. And like I said, this is a very on paper, this is a very, very good fight. Like I said, the buzz around this isn't the same. Like I said, even I mean, obviously the Jake Paul and Nate Robinson thing wasn't going to be a big deal. Obviously, it became a big deal after the knockout. Like I said, the Mike Tyson and Roy Jones thing, like it was a big deal because they were Mike Tyson and Roy Jones, because they were stars. So that's why people cared. That's why people wanted to tune in, whether they paid for it or didn't pay for a different story. But that's why they wanted to tune in. Like I said, I don't know if this fight has that same appeal, and I said that's the issue with boxing, is that like how does your best matchups not get people's attention? It's because your best fighters aren't necessarily your biggest stars. And like I said, until that is the case, you're gonna have problems like this. And problems again in terms of like the numbers not being where they're at. Like even some of the pay-per-views that have gone on, like when I think it was like Top Rank was putting on their stuff earlier and things like that. Like the numbers just weren't what they should have been for some of these fighters that were getting back in the ring. And like I said, that's really the big issue here, is that how do we have these great fighters that somehow people just aren't drawn to see? Like, what are you doing wrong? I said the same thing we talk about the MLB. Like, how is Mike Trout not known around the country, at least? I said your average person doesn't know who Mike Trout is. Your average person doesn't have to watch basketball and they know who Steph Curry is. They know who LeBron is. They know who Russell Westbrook is. Most likely. They know who probably James Harden is. Like, things like that. Like, Kevin Durant probably a little bit different. But, again, you get the point. They know who those guys are. You know who Patrick Mahomes is. You know who Tom Brady is. You know who Peyton Manning is. Because they were stars. And I said there's some sort of disconnect with the sport of boxing and these boxers right now where they're just not creating the stars. Like I said, hopefully this fight, although this weekend goes well, and then like again that can be used to propel Errol Spence to that level of stardom where he could have been at if not for the car crash. But like I said, that requires him to win the fight, obviously. Like I said, that's kind of where you're at. Just like where do you go from here, kind of thing. Like I said, same thing with Teofimo Lopez. Like he's like I think like 25. Like I said, he won all these belts. Like again, it was in a very good fight, very close fight. Depending on obviously the scorecards were what they were, but like again, very competitive fight. Like how is he not a star yet? Or how is he not on his way to stardom? Like I said, I think that's like the issue. So like I said, I thought Mike Tyson's comments, obviously coming from him, were very interesting, but I think they're also very true. Like I said, I think that will be reflected in the conversation and discussion around this fight over the weekend. Like I said, I don't think as many people care about this fight, even though, like I said, on paper, it's a very good fight, as they did about the Mike Tyson-Roy Jones fight, even though that fight literally meant nothing. But because it was Mike Tyson and Roy Jones, people cared. Like I said, boxing needs to figure out a way to get people to care about these boxers. One way or the other. Like I said, either you love them or you hate them, whatever it is. You got to get people to care about the fighters in the way that UFC fans or just your average person cares about the success or failure of these UFC stars. I said that's not where boxing's at. But like I said, with the YouTubers, it brought some of that life back. So, okay, all right, what did they do to get their viewership in and get the numbers up? And how can we use that for guys that are actual boxers? Seems pretty simple to me. Like I said, just simple social media marketing and branding and like I said, back and forth, trash talking, things like that. But again, we'll kind of see what happens from there. So like I said, I'm kind of curious about the fight in general, but also again, just to see if it's even as popular as the fight last week was between two guys that were clearly, that are obviously past their prime, that are washed up, and the fight didn't really mean anything. And this fight is like for belts and championships, and like I said, a bigger fight is potentially at stake here if Errol Spence Jr. was to lose. So again, it'll be interesting to see. Speaking of this weekend, after this next break, we'll come back and discuss, as we normally do, like again, just previews of the weekend, preview college football, and then we'll come back and then do a preview of the NFL. So we discuss those right after the break. Stay right there.
Are you looking to get your college football fix? Looking to get the latest news on your favorite school's team? The GSMC College Football Podcast is your ticket to all things college football. Join us as we talk college football from the national championship, the college rivalries, the bowl game, to the Heisman Trophy. To which conference is the best? We've got you covered for the Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, the Pac-12, ACC, and everything in between. Download the GSMC College Football Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
So, the college football slate is, it's late in the season, so at this point we're kind of just waiting for championship weekend. But, obviously, one of the biggest storylines is Ohio State hopefully being able to play. Obviously, they'll be without Ryan Day. Obviously, we don't know which players they will or won't be without. We won't know that until Saturday, but we're going to try to get this game played, and obviously they got to get their game played against Michigan next week in order to be in the clear. But like I said, them having two of their last 3 games canceled, and now being at risk of not being able to make the Big Ten championship and thus not being able to play in the college football playoff would be pretty huge. So I'm going to try to get this game played. Obviously, you got to beat Michigan State, which they should, and then they got Michigan next week. If they can play both those games, then they're in the clear. They win both those games, get to the Big Ten championship game, win that game, then they're in the college football playoff. It's like that simple, I think. Like I said, they got to play first. And they got to win. Like I said, we'll see kind of what they look like without Ryan Day, because obviously he won't be there. Like I said, other players-wise, I don't really know who they will or won't have. But that is obviously a very big story for this weekend, just because, like I said, they're back and playing, but also they need to hopefully be playing or have played, because the game's at noon, by this time on Saturday. When you guys hear this, because again, like, that's really what matters. Is as of Thursday night when I'm recording this, that they're able to play. All right, that's cool. But if they're not able to play by Saturday, then that, like I said, that's a completely different scenario. And then, like I said, also, they got to win. Like bigger than playing the game, they got to win the game. Well, first they got to play the game, obviously, because that's what's important. But then once they play the game, they got to win the game. So, like I said, that's where they're at this point. So again, we'll kind of see what happens there. And like I said, they got an early time slot, but still, like I said, we'll see kind of what happens with that game. Also in the Big Ten, you got Indiana playing their first game without Michael Penix Jr. I'm playing against Wisconsin, who's not a bad team. They've only played about like 3 games, so we'll see. But obviously, they're still trying to be that team that if Ohio State can't make the Big Ten championship game, they can. They need to do that, like I said, without Michael Penix. So that'll be interesting to see kind of how they come out and how they play without him, because he's obviously done for the year now. Like I said, Wisconsin, it's hard to say if they're a good team or a bad team. Obviously, they did just lose to Northwestern. The offense would struggle mightily in that game. And obviously, they got their game last week canceled against Minnesota. So I guess they lost to Northwestern. I guess that was 2 weeks ago. And obviously, their game last week was canceled. And they've had multiple games before that canceled as well. Like I said, they've only played 3 games up to this point, and there was only 2 games left on the schedule. So, that should be an interesting one. Just again, from an Indiana standpoint, to trying to keep pace with Ohio State, just in case. I guess they're still kind of in the clear overall, because like I said, the next highest team in the division is 2-2, so they'll probably still get in. But again, you would just prefer to win those games. And then Wisconsin, like I said, they're in a tough spot, seeing as they already lost to Northwestern. But again, if they continue to win and Northwestern were to lose again to they're not playing Minnesota because that's canceled. I guess Illinois next week, which, it could happen. Illinois has 2 wins, so it's not like they're winless. But their 2 wins are against Rutgers and Nebraska, so there is that. I just said I'll just be curious to see how Indiana looks without their starting quarterback. Also in interesting news, or I guess in news of teams that didn't play last week, because I don't think Texas A&M was able to play. They played no, they didn't. No, they played LSU. My bad. Yeah, the 2 games before that were postponed. That's what I was thinking of. But yeah, they'll be back against Auburn. Like I said, Texas A&M just got to keep winning to try to keep pace and hope Alabama slips up somewhere so they have a shot at the SEC championship game. It's probably not going to matter since they already lost. But again, they just need to keep winning to keep faith, and then keep pace. And also, again, if they continue to win and they're still in that 5-6 range, as long as Florida doesn't win the SEC championship game, then you still got a shot to get back into get into the college football playoff. So they just need to keep winning to keep, like I said, keep hovering around that first one or second one out. And like I said, Auburn is a team that they should be able to beat, and they should beat, at least on paper. But again, you got to see. Same thing with Florida. Again, keep winning. They're playing Tennessee. That shouldn't really be a tough matchup for them. And they'll clinch the SEC East title if they win this game against Tennessee. But still, you got to do it. Like I said, that's what's important. And obviously, this will be another chance for Kyle Trask to pad his Heisman stats, if you will. Because again, at this point, I imagine it's his to lose with other guys like Justin Fields missing time and Trevor Lawrence missing time and Zach Wilson being at BYU. We'll talk about them in a second. And Mac Jones and Najee Harris have been great, but again, they're on the same team. It's kind of hard to. It's going to be hard to pick one because you would assume they're probably going to split votes. So like I said, Kyle Trask doesn't have to worry about that. There's another chance for him to potentially pad his stats in a game. Iowa State, newly in the top 10 in the college football playoff, takes on West Virginia. Again, a solid team, but nothing too crazy. And just for them, continue to win, continue to try to climb your way up into the college football playoff again, get a little bit higher. Continue to get you a little bit higher. And like I said, then just be in that hovering distance, right below, like I said, right below the top four. So, like, again, if anybody slips up or anybody has to drop out or anything like that, then boom, you're right back in there. And then, like I said, boom, you're right back in there. And then you are good to go. And also, again, just looking around in other top 25 matchups. Notre Dame, again, continues to win. They play Syracuse. Again, that doesn't really... They should smoke them. But again, just continue to win. So you don't... Again, all you gotta do is be at the... All you gotta do is be at... Like I said, be undefeated. That's what I meant to say. Be undefeated when you face Clemson. And then, like I said, even if you lose, as long as it's close, like, you're probably still a lot to get in. And obviously, if you win, you're definitely in. But I said, you can't go out there and randomly get upset by Syracuse. Like, that can't happen. So there is that. Who else? Alabama's taking on LSU this weekend. I mean, LSU's going to get smoked, most likely. But, hey, chance for Alabama, Devontae Smith, Najee Harris, Mac Jones to continue to showcase their skills for the NFL scouts and people like that. Because, again, it's not going to be a situation where they should be in danger of losing that game. Again, you never know. But that's not really a game that should be in danger of losing. USC as the lone real Pac-12 team, highly rated, you could argue, because I guess they're 20 right now. Yeah, ahead of Washington and ahead of Oregon, so they got to keep winning if the Pac-12 is even going to have a shot. This doesn't have a shot, but if it does, it's USC, and like I said, they got to keep winning, play Washington State this weekend, and then they play UCLA next weekend, so you got to win those two. And obviously, one of the games that I'm definitely more interested in, and I think a lot of people should be interested in, is this BYU Coastal Carolina game at 5:30 p.m. on ESPNU. Now, why does this game matter? For starters, both these teams are undefeated. That's kind of cool. Coastal Carolina, I believe they said was supposed to play Liberty this weekend, but obviously Liberty wasn't able to make it, and BYU had an open game on their schedule. So they obviously caught some flack and got some pushback for not being willing to take on the Washington game, which, I mean, I kind of get, because again, they were at 14 at the time. It's like, is it really worth it? But also, it was like, hey, like, you have the open week, like, they're another highly ranked team. It's against a Power 5 conference. Like, hey, you win that game, like, maybe you get into the top 10, a situation like that. So now they had another chance to do it against Coastal Carolina, who isn't probably the same caliber as Washington is, just again in terms of name value, and I mean, I don't know about level of play, because again, they're undefeated. It's hard to say that they're not good, but like I said, they're not a Power 5 school. Again, that carries a little bit more weight, has a little bit more cachet, I would imagine, with the committee. But still, like I said, it's another decent opponent on BYU's schedule, because like I said, they don't really have that many. Like their best opponent that they played, because obviously they had Army early on, but that got postponed. The best one they played right now is Boston College. Is Boise State, excuse me. Boise State in Boise, and they smoked them. So again, that's good, but that's really it. Like again, you're talking about placing teams like North Alabama, Western Kentucky, Texas State, Houston, Louisiana Tech, Troy, Navy, UTSA. Like again, that doesn't really carry that much weight, and that's why they're only ranked 13, even though they're 9-0 and they've been dominant all year. It's like, you win this game, I don't think it propelled you into the top 10 most likely, unless you beat them by 30 or something. But like I said, at least it's another quality win on your resume. Which again, that's just what BYU needs at this point, just quality wins. Like they just don't have that many, because they don't have that many good opponents they can play. With everybody playing mainly conference schedules and things like that, it's hard for them to get a quality opponent. Or again, they had the chance with Washington last week and chose not to take it. So there is that. Like I said, they didn't do that this week. They took the game, and obviously they have San Diego State next week. But like I said, if they beat Coastal Carolina, at least it's another quality win on the resume. And like I said, that'll be good for them. Like I said, just another chance for guys for a guy like Zach Wilson to continue to showcase his skills. Like I said, he's another guy that's in the Heisman race, another guy that could potentially, or maybe already has catapulted himself into a first round quarterback, depending on how like the combine and pro days and things like that go. But again, he's a guy that could potentially be that. And if that is in fact the case, then like I said, you want to show up against another quality opponent, at least on paper. Like I said, they're ranked 18th in the country. They're undefeated. On paper, they're a quality opponent. It's like I said, not the best opponent you could play, or not the best team. I mean, he's not Alabama. Even though Alabama's defense is a little shaky this year. It's not Notre Dame. It's not Clemson. It's not Ohio State. But again, for what BYU can face, this is a quality opponent. And like I said, if they win, then just another notch in their belt. If they lose, then all right, then they don't worry about the playoff talk or the undefeated talk or whatever. Now Coastal Carolina gets a notch in their belt. Like I said, it works both ways for both these teams. But obviously BYU, as the team is higher, has a chance to maybe sneak into at least the top 10 and get into like a New Year's 6 game, which would be kind of cool. And like I said, if they can do that, or like I said, if they are able to do that, I imagine them win against Coastal Carolina will play a decent role in helping to make sure that that happens. So like I said, not too many like amazing matchups on the slate, but again, that makes sense. You basically have one weekend left before conference championships. You got this weekend, and then for some teams it's next weekend. For some teams it's in 2 weeks. Again, it all kind of depends on your conference and like when they started and like if you got games to make up or things like that. But like I said, this is like either the last or one of the last games on the regular season slate. Teams trying to finish out the season strong, especially the teams at the top, don't want to drop an unnecessary game, and then now you mess yourself up for the standings and the playoff with the playoff committee. Now, like I said, now a conference championship win doesn't matter as much because you already lost another game that you maybe shouldn't have, or just your first game that you maybe should have. So, like I said, kind of see how that goes. But like I said, the one I'll be at least paying attention to a little bit just because of the intrigue is the BYU Coastal Carolina game, because the rest of these games are just kind of like whatever. Like most of the high profile teams should get the job done. You would think. Like I said, the Indiana Wisconsin one's the only other one I'm kind of like intrigued by just because of the Penix injury. But like I said, that is just me. Teach their own. So after we come back here, we will go to the NFL side, and that'll be Sunday. And also that USC game's on Sunday as well. They play Washington State on Sunday. Don't know why, but they do. And like I said, we'll talk about the interesting storylines and matchups in the NFL. I think I said NFC. The NFL and their slate of games this upcoming weekend. So we'll discuss that right after the break. Stay right there.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC, Invicta FC, Bellator, and one championship. We got the fights covered. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts. Past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
Here again on the GSMC Sports Podcast, presented by GSMC Podcast Network. So on the slate, at least in the early window, the most intriguing matchup to your boy is the Browns and the Titans. Both teams come in 8-3. And both teams, well, I mean, the Browns are probably out of the division just because you only got 3 games to make up and 5 games left. It'd be kind of difficult to do that, though. Again, not impossible, but kind of difficult to do, personally, in my opinion. But the Titans, on the other hand, they are 8-3. They are 1 game up on the Colts right now in the division. Well, actually, no. Maybe they're 2 games up, technically, because, again, the Colts division record is 1-2. But like I said, they're 1 game up in the loss column. And like the win column, obviously, but like again, they're 1 game up on the Colts right now, obviously due to their win last week, and they're trying to keep that lead with Again, still have a game against the Packers left on schedule. Still got another game with the Texans on the schedule. So like I said, this is a good game. And then again, this is maybe a potential playoff matchup, depending on like what seed the Browns get, if the Titans are able to hold on to the division. They said they could see each other again. So again, just a nice little testing of the waters to see where both teams are at. And that's what hopefully kind of feels like, is a playoff game. In to a degree, obviously, again, it's not want to go home. It's not the end of the world if either team loses. But, now again, there's two good teams, at least in record, later in the season, that should have a playoff-type feel to it, you would think. And again, two good running games, two quarterbacks that aren't really going to get in the way most of the time. Again, neither Tannehill nor Baker is going to really sling the ball around the field like that. And as long as they're not turning the ball over, then again, they're just give the ball to their running backs. Like they should be all right. Like I said, it's a situation where you just kind of want to see where both teams are at right now. Like, are they ready for that playoff caliber football? So we know what the Titans could do or did last year. Like I said, that's last year. That's not this year. We'll see where they're at this year. So this will be an interesting test. That's the 1:00. Also in the 1:00 slate, is there any other interesting ones? Well, obviously just the Saints, only just because, again, the Taysom Hill experience is always kind of interesting. Because obviously last week they won the game. I think threw for like 78 yards. No touchdowns again. He still has not thrown a touchdown pass since taking over. So I don't think he's thrown a touchdown pass in his career, honestly. I could be wrong about that. But, like, obviously, he hasn't had to do a whole lot throwing the ball. And they face the Falcons, team that at least in theory can put points up. I mean, they just put up 43 on the Raiders. Granted, Saints defense, much better than the Raiders. But still, it's a situation where like the Saints should win. But again, you can never really take the Falcons lightly, necessarily. Though again, the last time they played, they sacked. I think it was that was the game they sacked Matt Ryan like 8 times. Yeah, like he had a terrible game, threw 2 picks. So it's a situation where I kind of just want to see where both teams are at, and like I said, just kind of go, or not to see where both teams are at, but just kind of see if you can continue to assert your dominance over your division with the Saints. Like I said, because the Falcons aren't negative a team, 4-7, but again, the games are usually somewhat competitive, especially against division rivals. So again, just kind of situation to see how that one goes. And then again, also I just want to see like if Taysom Hill's actually going to throw the ball this week. That'd be kind of interesting development for me. Obviously, the Bengals and Dolphins play, but that's an unfortunate one because that would have been Burrow versus Tua, but obviously no Burrow. So that's a game the Dolphins should win and continue to keep pace for a playoff spot in just in the AFC, not in their division, but definitely in their division, but mainly in the AFC because they're they're only a game back of the Bills, and they still have to play them. I think week 17, so you never know what could happen there. And another 1:00 is the Colts and the Texans that I'm going to be keeping my eyes on. Only because, like I said, the Colts got to continue. The Colts got to continue to, like I said, win games. So now they're behind. And now they're behind the Titans in the division. So like I said, they need to continue to win games to try to overtake them. Like I said, with only 5 games left, and the Texans aren't necessarily an easy team to beat, though they won't have Will Fuller. And someone else got caught up. I forget who else it was, but it was Will Fuller and somebody else on the Texans that got caught up in the suspension situation. Bradley Roby. He both been suspended for the last 6 games, or for 6 games in general, so last 5, and I guess 1 for next season for PED. So got to see what the Texans offense looks like without Will Fuller in there because he's been great for them. And like I said, this will be an interesting one because again, Deshaun Watson's not a bad, he's playing very well this year. So again, you never want to go up against good quarterbacks, and then that's always can be kind of dangerous, even if their record isn't necessarily what you would hope for. So again, a situation where you want to just kind of keep your eye on that, especially when the Colts, like you said, they play the Texans twice, they play the Steelers, and they play the Raiders. So again, not an easy slate of games they got coming up. So again, you want to get it started off right after losing to the Titans by beating the Texans. Like that would be a nice start to Like I said, than their last 5 games. Knowing, like, again, you got to play them again, you got to play the Raiders, and you got to play the Steelers. So, like I said, that's just something else that I'm keeping my eye out for in the later window. The Rams Cardinals is obviously a huge game with huge implications. Both teams are coming off of a couple back-to-back losses. Like, obviously, the Cardinals got the Hail Mary to go to 6-3, but now they've lost 2 straight to the Seahawks and then to the Patriots. And then the Rams are coming off their loss to the 49ers, which, I mean, that's not I mean, not against some guys back, but still, not a game you're supposed to lose. Not with Nick Mullins starting. So, again, both teams kind of need to have a get-right game, and this could be that for the Rams. It could be that for Cardinals. And like I said, if the Cardinals win, that continues to cloud things in the NFC West, along with the NFC playoff picture as a whole, because then both teams will be 7-5 and things like that. So, like I said, it's a game for both Kyler and Jared Goff to potentially try to get right, because they've both been, well, Jared Goff struggled last week, and even in Tampa, like, he did enough to win, but like I said, at the end, like, he was kind of, I think, I know he had at least 1 pick. I forget if he had 2. I'm about to go look it up. But I know he had at least 1 pick later in that game. No, he had 2. Like I said, he had 2 picks later in that game, and luckily for them, the defense was able to hold out, and that's part of the reason why they played for the field goal there at the end, because they didn't want Jared Goff throwing another interception in the second half. They threw one to open the second half, and then he threw one right before that was the Chris Godwin touchdown. Yeah, the Chris Godwin touchdown, and that ended up tying the game. So like I said, even though they won the Bucs game, it was definitely a little dicey. So you want to try to make sure you get that right. But yeah, like I said, a bounce back game for potentially for either of these teams. So again, it'll be interesting to see which team is able to come out on top. Also, again, because you got to keep your eyes on the NFC East, because somebody's got to win the NFC East. The interesting games in the 425 window will be the Eagles play the Packers. Should probably lose that game, though, unless, if they give the ball to Miles Sanders and they run the ball out, maybe they could, keep Aaron Rodgers off the field, do kind of what they did last year, which is play ball control, get a timely turnover, run the ball down their throats, and then, you sneak out of Lambeau with the win. I don't expect that to happen, but hey, you never know. In fairness, they probably lose that game if Devontae Adams doesn't hurt his toe. I think he had almost 200 yards through 3 quarters. It was crazy. But they do have Darius Slay. But also Darius Slay did just get worked by DK Metcalf. But also Devontae Adams isn't DK Metcalf, but he's a better route runner. So it's you got to see. But yeah, and then so like I said, the Eagles should probably lose that game. But you still got to see what happens. And then the Giants, they play the Seahawks, but they're most likely to be playing them without Daniel Jones. He has 8 touchdowns and 9 interceptions this year. I did not know his stats were that bad. Good gosh. I thought he had more touchdowns than that. Lord. They're playing the Seahawks. Seahawks got a nice win on Monday night. Like I said, the Giants are in first place. You want to kind of keep that first place spot. And the Seahawks, again, do kind of play down to the competition. Again, that Eagles game, if Wentz plays a little bit better or they run the ball a little bit more, in theory, could have been a much tighter game that didn't need a Hail Mary at the end to kind of get it to the single digits. So again, Daniel Jones can't play, and they got to go with the Colt McCoy show. That definitely changes things up a little bit. And seeing as he didn't practice on Thursday and just worked on the side with training, that makes it a little bit dicey. And like I said, their next 4 weeks are kind of tough. They got Seahawks, Cardinals, Browns, and Ravens back to back to back to back. So they're in first place right now. No real guarantee they'd stay that way. So that's a rough spot to be in for the Giants. But no, this is what it is. Like I said, at least they were in first place this week. And then you got the doubleheader Monday, Washington against the Steelers. Again, Steelers 11-0, but it's a weird 11-0 because then you could argue they haven't always looked good when they've won, but they won, so that's really what matters. You got Washington, who's been playing better recently. Obviously, they smoked the Cowboys on Thanksgiving. They beat the Bengals. And then, they've won 2 in a row. Because they lost to the Lions and lost to the Giants. But like I said, they won 2 in a row. Alex Smith is playing better. Antonio Gibson is obviously playing great. And we got to see what's going to happen to that defense, obviously, now with down Devin Bush and down Bud Dupree. Again, the Steelers normally find guys to fit in and be all right. Because, again, they haven't missed Devin Bush. But, again, they've filled them relatively well without him. and clearly they haven't lost a game, but still, Washington is playing better. They got a very solid front four, very solid pass rush. So again, if Ben's going to hold on to the ball, which he hasn't been, he's been getting the ball very quickly, as they pointed out on the Wednesday afternoon game. So that's been good for him. But again, you never know with that. So with that being said, again, you kind of if you're watching, you're like, hey, look, we're right there in the division. Like we could be the team that maybe gives the Steelers their first loss on a weird week for them, having to play from Wednesday to Monday. Like I said, if there was a week to try to sneak up on those Steelers and get them, it could be this week. So like I said, Washington got to do that knowing that they got a not an easy schedule, because the Niners are getting healthier, the Seahawks are the Seahawks, and the Panthers, like, whatever, they play Eagles the end of the season. Who knows what the Eagles will be like at that point. Like I said, they got some winnable games on the stretch, and like I said, they can get this one that kind of banks them in case they drop like a game to the Seahawks or like a game to the Niners. Like I said, winning this one kind of banked them, especially when there's a decent chance that every other team in your division loses. Because the Cowboys play the Ravens Monday night, that'll be the return of Lamar and like some others. So like I said, you would think the Cowboys are going to lose that game, but hey, you never know. Then obviously the other game is Bills-Niners on Monday night. Obviously Niners coming off a big win against the Rams. The Bills are again trying to keep their lead in their division, knowing that they have the two AFC games against the Patriots and the Bills end the season. Plus they got a game against the Steelers on Sunday night next week. So again, they got some games that may be a little dicey down the stretch. And so like I said, getting this win against the Niners would be huge for them. But like I said, since the Niners are playing better, and like I said, again, guys healthy and things like that, getting at least especially on the defensive side, like that could matter. I mean, I guess they're not playing that much better. They just beat the Rams. Let me just say that they beat the Rams because they had lost to the Saints, they lost to the Packers before that. It's not like they were playing sensational before, but they came out to bye and beat the Rams. So I said we'll see if that can carry over and they can beat the Bills. And then again, they got their schedule down the stretch isn't. They got Washington, they got the Cowboys, they got Cardinals, and the Seahawks. So again, not too crazy. I guess at least maybe they could fight and get back to like 8-8, 7-9, like a respectable record for as much injuries and things that as they've dealt with throughout the season. And I said, getting a win against Buffalo would be big for that. That would get them back to 6-6, and now they're still on the outside of the playoff race, but they're not that far on the outside. Like I said, there's currently somebody that won the NFCs. So then there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Like the last place team, the 7th place would be the Cardinals right now. We're 6-5. Like I said, that's not that far from the Niners, and you could argue that they could be 6-6 by the time Monday night is played. And I said, if that is the case, then hey, look, you tie that game, now you back and you right in the playoff mix. Like you right there. So again, kind of see what happens with the Niners, but like I said, yeah, quite a few interesting games. Like, again, not everything's going to be interesting, but again, you got to pay attention to what's happening in the NFC East. You got to pay attention to the AFC North, and obviously, the big games in the AFC North will be Browns-Titans, and will be Steelers-Washington, along with obviously the Ravens getting guys back from COVID and seeing if they can like kind of right the ship a little bit, because right now they're on the outside looking in of the playoff picture, and that's not where they expected to be at the beginning of the season. But we'll see how it all plays out, because we got games up until Tuesday this coming week in the NFL as well. So see, well, and that's assuming nothing gets pushed back, which we won't know if that will or won't happen. So again, we'll kind of see how that plays out. But that'll do for me here today on the GSMC Sports Podcast, presented by GSMC Podcast Network. I want to thank you guys, as always, for listening to me talk about sports. If you haven't already, subscribe to the podcast. Make sure you never miss an episode. Make sure I was on top when we drop our latest stuff. Also, be cool, please, as well. Give us a 5-star rating, write us a review. Be very appreciated, very helpful. Lots of you guys like. I just like the ways you can improve. All that fun stuff. And also, if you're on social media, we're on social media, so you can find us there. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. We can talk, we can chat, we can debate, we can discuss. We can talk about, like I said, the fight, Errol, Spence, Garcia coming up this weekend. We can talk about your opinions on the Steelers. How good are they? Even though, like I said, they're 11-0, but how good are they? That's debatable. Talk about what you think about the Westbrook trade. Like, does it really matter? Is it a good move for either side? Like I said, we can talk about that. Talk about, like I said, the Lakers getting commitments from AD and LeBron. What does that mean for them moving forward? All those things. Feel free to reach out to us and discuss on whatever social media platform you use the most. Before I get out of here, as I always do, I want to give a shout out to essential workers. They've been working tirelessly through the pandemic to make sure everything's good and everybody can be as safe and as safe and as healthy as they can be. They go in stores, different places, different things like that. So shout out to doctors, nurses, EMTs, first responders, firefighters, postal service workers, retail workers, grocery store workers, dollar store workers, FedEx, UPS, Amazon. Like I said, anybody's been deemed essential. If you've been deemed essential, shout out to you. You're doing the work that a lot of people need and a lot of people want, and is very obviously essential during this time period. And because of that, maybe we'll still very bad off, but we're not as bad, which is kind of crazy to say, because like we are probably worse off than any other country right now. But without the work of these essential workers, it would be 10 times worse, which is crazy to think about. Which is again why it's important to wear your mask, people. Like I said, shout out to them. Like I said, if you're still going out to bars and restaurants and things like that, if like they said they're not closed down, if you're going to go out, like I said, just make sure, one, you're safe, and two, tip your waiters, tip your waitresses, tip your bartenders nicely. Like I said, the restaurant industry, among many industries, is going to be hit hard during the winter, as like I said, it's going to be harder to be indoors at these places. And so because of that, like I said, if you can, and it's within your means, make sure you try to go above and beyond for these people. Like I said, they'll be hit hard, just like a lot of people will be hit hard. They're not alone in doing this, not trying to single them out as the only people that will be affected. But again, if you can afford to go out, then I imagine you can afford to at least give a little bit of a tip. And that's just me. But again, I'm not trying to pocket watch anybody. Like I said, it would be very appreciated, I'd imagine, by those people in those industries. And like I said, also, wear your mask. It's very simple, very easy. Help control the spread until we get the vaccine up and running next year, which again, most people won't even have access to until probably late, like mid to late next year, 2021 anyway. So it's going to be a while, people. But yeah, that'll do it for me today. I've been Chris Blades. That has been my time. And until next time, peace out.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.